President Trump putting the media on notice.
When we have those press conferences, I actually said we shouldn't have them. Because Sarah Huckabee,
it's been 100 years we've been doing it.
No, but listen, but there's never been action like this. This is crazy. I mean, we're getting higher ratings. They're getting higher ratings on those press conferences.
Would you seriously consider stopping these press sessions?
No, we do it in a different way.
How?
We do it through a piece of paper with a perfectly accurate, beautiful answer.
You never know what he might say next, right? Well, the White House Correspondents Association firing back, slamming this move as a threat to government accountability. Well, president of the association and Reuters White House correspondent Jeff Mason joins us now. Jeff, good to have you here.
Nice to be here.
Boy, it has been quite a year. I mean, even with the White House Correspondents' Dinner that you run, President Trump saying, I'm not going. I'm going to hold my own event in Pennsylvania, rally myself. What do you make of this latest statement from the president?
Well, it's hard to interpret whether or not that is something that they're seriously considering or not, but what I said in my statement and what I would repeat today on behalf of the Correspondents Association is we value those briefings, and there's a reason for that. Journalists have a job to do every day, and that is to ask questions. And that's to ask questions of people at the highest levels of power and authority in the U.S. government. And the briefings are one of the main places where we can do that at the White House. And so we would object to any move to take them away.
Jeff, part of what you said at the White House Correspondents' Dinner was that this president has provided more access, has been more open than previous presidents. So the criticism isn't access. His criticism is we say things and they get twisted in ways that are unprecedented. He calls it fake news. You call it something else. But does he not have a fair criticism, especially compared to the Obama administration, that this press has finally woken up to its investigative responsibility and they're going after him no matter what?
Well, first of all, at the Correspondents' Dinner, I didn't say that he had provided more access. I didn't make a comparison. I just said that the access has been good, and it has. And that's something that we also find very valuable, the opportunity to go into the Oval Office and ask President Trump questions when he's meeting with foreign leaders and to have these briefings. As far as the role of the press, look, this was played in the clip before. There have been briefings for 100 years at the White House, and the press has carried on its role of probing questions regardless of who's in power, whether it's a Democrat, whether it's a Republican, whether it's controversial news or whether it's not.
So, Jeff, I have to take issue with that a little bit because Ben Rhodes bragged after the Iran deal that reporters would happily report his talking points almost unchanged. I mean, there was a fawning nature of the Obama administration that is totally flipped under President Trump. Would you not acknowledge that?
Ben Rhodes does not speak for the White House press corps. Ben Rhodes speaks for himself.
Do you think that anything should change when it comes to the media and how they have handled the Trump administration? The way the president describes it is hostile.
Well, you know what? Every president, I'm sure, would describe their news coverage as not being what they'd like to see. And I've actually had an interesting role this year of being on the other side of the news occasionally and also seeing stories that have been written about the Correspondents Association.
Probably not all accurate, right?
That I wouldn't necessarily like or that I wouldn't necessarily have written myself. But that's part of the gig. That's part of the job. And I'm not comparing that to being president of the United States. Of course, that's not even close to apples for apples. But I get that people don't always like the coverage that they see, but it is our job not to provide coverage as journalists that leaders in office wants to see. It's our job to do coverage that is accurate, that reports the facts, and that questions people in power.
So when I say, does anything need to change, you think that no, nothing does need to, that reporters have been as accurate as they could possibly be?
You know what? I can't speak for every single reporter or how they cover the news. I can speak for the Correspondents Association and for the right of journalists to be in the White House press briefing room and asking questions. That right and that principle is protected by the First Amendment, and that's what we're speaking up for.
The volume and the hyperbole of the press under the Trump administration is something very different than what we've seen. Middle America looks at that press pool very differently. Would you acknowledge that there is an overwhelming left-wing bias of the media that's going after someone they see as counter to their own values?
It is not my place to discuss left-wing or right-wing balance or bias. That depends, I think, largely on where people get their news. And I would encourage people who are watching television and reading news coverage to be aware, as consumers of news, about where they're getting their news and who the reporters are, who the networks or who the newspapers are. I do think it's important for journalists to recognize that there is a responsibility to correct your mistakes if you make them. And it's certainly very important to me as a journalist to report news neutrally and without any bias. I would hope that my colleagues are doing the same, and I think largely in the White House press corps, it is our job and our responsibility just to ask those questions and to report to consumers of news, whether they are supporters of President Trump, whether they are supporters of the Democrats. That should make no difference to us as journalists.
All right, Jeff Mason, we're going to have to leave it right there. Thanks for being with us this
Thanks
morning.
for coming on. A lot of reporters
My pleasure.
would. We appreciate it.
Yeah, we
Thank you.
appreciate that.